Well, as I indicated, our next guest was no stranger to the program, Ray Roberts, a sports commentator, and Ray has been, well, I should say that Ray penned a piece, a commentary that I thought was very, very relevant, very important, and I had invited Ray to be on the program to basically share that because it has been a burning issue in recent weeks. And by way of context as well, when Ray was on the program last August, he spoke in the context of without a vaccine, because at that time there was no vaccine, what, his thought pattern, what he's expecting to be done, etc., etc., etc. And now there's a vaccine, Ray has been basically calling on national sporting associations to be part of the whole vaccination campaign. And I thought it's very important because they have a very important role to play. Just as how the NBA, for example, and the baseball teams and others have been using their platform to encourage their fans, their spectators to be vaccinated. In fact, in some instances, they actually paying the spectators, their fans, to come to see their game and at the same time be vaccinated. There's also the pop-up vaccination sites at some of the stadium. So let me invite Ray Roberts to our program this afternoon, and not in Brooklyn, New York. Ray is actually in a sunny St. George's, I would say, and most times when we speak to Ray, it has to be very sunny, I assume, albeit he's not on the beach as per usual. But let me welcome Ray. Ray, good afternoon to you.
Well, good afternoon, Mike. I came from the beach to
there it goes,
the program. I thought I would have been late, but I got here at 10 minutes to, and it means you said 2 o'clock. Yeah. So I'm certainly meeting your deadline.
Certainly.
Beautiful day on the beach. Not a lot of people. In fact, I think I might have been one of the few, if you're talking about tourists, because there's no tourists anymore. So it's people like me that makes the beach look useful. Unfortunately, many more people are not doing that, but beautiful day on the beach, calm water. The sea is perfect. You can see meters from one part to the other part. So you're missing a lot.
That's good. That's good to know, Ray. But as I was saying, Ray, the whole issue of the pandemic, the vaccination, and your plea to national sporting bodies, and I think it's not. Even though you made reference to that in Grenada, I think your writing has appealed throughout the region because it's not just Grenada. We see what's happening in Trinidad, for example, and other countries like Jamaica, Barbados. They are also having, problems regarding the COVID-19. And I think it's an important, revelation from you in terms of using sports, using their platform, the sporting associations, to get folks to be vaccinated. Why, Ray? First of all, what was the thinking behind that? Why you believe that National Sporting Association has that responsibility, or they have that responsibility?
Well, let me say thanks for the invitation, and I thought about it before coming on. In fact, let me announce that I'm going to be taking mine on Tuesday. It's not that I had any fear, because some of my colleagues, we have a sort of table tennis group and other sports, mainly those of us who are no longer competing other than recreation. Quite a number have taken it, and I don't know if it's because we are still a bit athletic. Those who have taken it from our group, they had no side effects whatsoever. In fact, Anthony Benjamin took it Friday to Wednesday and came and played tennis on Wednesday like nothing happened. But more than that, Mike, I spent a lot of time, even during the COVID, in the playing field, 2 or 3 people watching, and there weren't many. So even though there was a vaccine, there was no clustering. The GFA started its age group season, And I guess people were starved of sports, so there started to be an of peace. But what drew my attention to the fear that we could be setting up ourselves for some future disaster is that after the match and halftime, the coaches with the players, spectators around the players, you would see dozens of people clustering. And the argument about, it's a vaccine that took very quick time to get on the market and all the, backward and forward. When you listen to the experts, and I prefer listen to the experts and follow the science, I concluded that there is no way we can sit by and be organizing sports, bringing out hundreds of people on a weekly basis, and put on the radio that we are following the COVID protocols. And when you go to the field, well, I'm sitting maybe in the pavilion, I have a mask on and two other people, but 80%, 90% of the people are not wearing anything. Those who are enthusiastically involved and getting involved, I mean, they're opening themselves for disaster. So to me, sports administrators, and particularly those of us who are seen as people of senior age, those of us who have been involved in other sports, I think we have that responsibility to people to do the right thing, encourage them to take the vaccine and recognize the value of it. So, Mike, that is the objective behind it. As responsible sports organizers, we cannot be ignoring that we have a responsibility because these players are going back to their family homes. They're going back to a village, and you know, it's not something that is going to say to you, "I got COVID from Michael Bascomary Roberts." It says nothing. You go home, and the trouble begins there. So we cannot ignore the reality that if 80% of the Israeli population could take it, 100 and how many millions in the United States likewise. I mean, I don't see any reason why we should ignore the evidence. I mean, it's not produced by one group of people. It is produced by people who are mixed. So there could be no betrayal of one sector of the community because I know people put, race into it, color into it, all sorts of things. So to me, it's time that we do what is right. And Mike, if I may add, you know that I had polio. I didn't born with a leg that is 3 inches shorter. It doesn't impact on me, I must say. But I remember my mother saying to me, and the family saying to me, those who are ahead of me, that I walked when I had about 7 months and was walking very strongly within the stones in where I grew up. It was a lot of stones. And then I certainly came down with what they thought was in those days called maljo, whatever was that. I mean, I was innocent. And they said, look, the family said it was you can smoke some black sage leaf or some fig leaf, put the child above it, and whatever it is will go. And 7 days after, she said she took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, Madam, your child has polio. I was one of the early cases in the 50s. So I'm saying let's not be foolish to start to say that they have produced a vaccine to kill some races. I mean, I have taken several other vaccines still, and I don't know that it has impacted upon me in any negative way. There may be people who have been impacted, but the vast majority of us, I mean, there is no polio cases in Grenada and across the Caribbean as there were in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So let's be sensitive to the reality of what is existing.
And I'm glad you made that point because in your writing you said that, and which we know that over the years, Ray, and it has been a case where from birth, there were vaccines that you had to take, whether it's polio, measles, mumps, whatever it is, and as you said, and a long list of others, So the vaccine now for the COVID-19 is nothing new in terms of what we know of, probably 20, 25 years ago, when a kid born, it's almost mandatory that you get some level of vaccination. In fact,
Right.
I recall, and I can say that when I was going to, have my permanent residency in the US some years ago, that I had to show evidence of vaccination, and it is not something I can say. Well, there's no if or but. It was mandatory, and if I want the permanent residency, I have to show it. So I agree with your point there, Ray, and as you said that the sports associations, and sports people in general and others are vaccinated to achieve, what you referred to and what we have been hearing in the news about the herd immunity. We know, for example, Ray, that, and it's good news to an extent, that Grenada will be hosting the West Indies versus South Africa T20 series. There might be people who may want to go and sit and watch the matches. How do you differentiate between those who are vaccinated and those who are not vaccinated? Just as probably here in the US, when they say that you have to be vaccinated to go to watch, whether it's the NBA or to go and watch baseball or whatever it is like that. How do you know whether or not folks are vaccinated or folks are not vaccinated, Ray?
Well, it will be, I guess there's a card given to you that you can perhaps put amend, but I think it may, be holding up the get into the arena. But if it is necessary, I think we should encourage it. Because let's face it, Michael, the Premier League here is popular. Football is, maybe athletics is the rival and basketball, but football is extremely popular. I mean, cricket is a sport we perhaps would get to the stadium to see in greater numbers. But football is the domestic sport that is on afternoons attracting large crowds. To continue the foolishness, I call it, that whoever it is planned to create a generation that can't reproduce and all the craziness, and to put something in you that people can follow wherever you're going. I don't know that I'm buying into it, but I could understand if there are people who are buying into it. But I think we have a responsibility to champion what is best for us, because there is no way, if we have, let's say, 30, 40 cases and about 20 of the people are badly off, we don't have the hospital for it. And in all fairness, you got to give credit to the health people, the government. They have tried their best, civil society, the religious community. They have all played a part in trying to get us as a people to recognize, look, that there are safeties and preventative measures that we have had, that we must adhere to, and many of us have done it well. Now, we are now given the privilege to play sports all across the country. Um, there are visitors coming in the country, asymptomatic or whatever. There could be one or two of them who perhaps innocently get into the fray. And that's where the problem starts.
Yeah.
So we have to, as responsible people, and that's what I would say again, because if you're the president of an association, that responsibility is just not to see a team travel for the CONCACAF or the netball or the basketball. That's not all. You have a greater responsibility to the athlete, in fact, to see that the athletes are not athletes, to see that their health and welfare, to my experience, is well protected. Because if two or three collapses, family in trouble. I mean, even if it's a poor family too, I mean, you have brought tragedy on a family that perhaps will maybe might not even recover. So let's think about it in a broad sense, and not saying ignore those who have doubts. You can't ignore those who have doubts. You need to give them greater attention. But there are people who are willing to take it. Let's create, maybe as you just said, the basketball. At Stadium, Queen's Park, Grenadian, the St. Patrick's facility that the GFA fixed, wonderful. The same thing can apply in St. John's, St. Mark, which is a very popular football center. I'm sure Ministry of Health will work with us to facilitate some of these things. So I think that should be a priority for the Ministry of Sports, the Olympic Committee, and the individual associations. I
Positions.
mean, we have some para athletes going next week to Arizona. And I mean, we can't force anybody, but I know some of them said to me they are going to take the vaccine ahead of going. I think a couple of them have already taken it. So of the three, it could be four, but of the three, I know a couple said to me they will take it. So they're only protecting themselves and doing themselves justice. To come back sick and to start to criticize government and to criticize the hospital. I mean, we know what we have, so we have to try to be preventative as much as possible.
Right. Well, Clev, deputy in the same. Thanks, Ray, in making that clarion call. I'm a senior citizen, fully vaccinated, and will be in Grenada, God's willing, for West Indies versus South Africa. And I want to sit and enjoy the matches. And he's saying in colloquial language, all you take the joke so we would have that opportunity to look, you know. And your good friend Margaret is saying the major leagues in the US have a two-tier system, one for the vaccinated and one for the unvaccinated but tested negative. Yeah, there are possibilities, but as you're saying, sports associations, Ray, must look at the positive side and seriously get involved in the campaign, as I quote, in the campaign to encourage, in this case, you're saying the football players, the referees, and spectators to protect themselves against COVID-19. But even though in this case you're referring to the GFA, because as you indicated, the Premier League is very popular, it's one of the biggest leagues in terms of sporting on the island. But you believe that the other national associations should also get into the fore?
No doubt about it, Michael. I mean, when I'm finished with you, I'm going to play table tennis actually, and we're going to be playing for hours. We have fun, about 20 of us. That group, and that is automatically social distancing. I mean,
Yeah,
we are what 8, 9 feet
back,
at
yeah.
times apart. But even with that, members of that group, I just want to be very Joseph has taken it, Trevor Rayburn has taken it. So the list is increasing, and they have taken it. They have taken both shots. In fact, I should have had both shots already. The idea is that you want to have safe sports because unlike where you are, and good to hear Margaret and Clever. Clever wouldn't miss anything in Grenada. He needs to have a plane because he doesn't miss anything in Grenada. But the clear challenge we have is that we know what the health facility in Grenada is. It's not going to be first world because there is COVID. In fact, the system is even more challenged because you have to continue with normal everyday activities at the hospital. And to compound it, if you have, I would say, just what, 10, 20 cases, you will be overwhelmed. So we have, and I'm seeing a lot of behavior now that, I mean, I hear people say about this, there is no need for state of emergency. Well, I strongly support it because I was in town yesterday and maybe I was the only person who didn't have a beer in my hand. I was perhaps the only one in that area that had a mask, and everybody seems to have, it's normal day. So I'm saying to you, Mike, that we have to pay attention to those things. The surrounding is important, not just what we do. If we are selfish, then what we do is all, but broaden it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting that you make mention of that. Something I want us to look at, um, in a few minutes. But um, and it has to do, Ray, with the whole issue of and I can tell you it was Barry Collymore who was talking about the liming and the whole aspect of socializing and thing, which is different to what we know of before. But it's sort of important, Ray, that you raise that point because when we spoke, it was last August. You raised a very important issue regarding sports and in the post-pandemic era, we spoke about the whole issue about the budgets. And remember, last August, there was a lot of things we didn't know, of at the time. So
Right.
you might have been speaking just in terms of, in hindsight, and to some extent, and assuming what will take place in the future. But I want to just play that part, that interesting part that you spoke about last August, and then we'll come back and discuss it, Ray.
So,
Right.
Michael, the first problem we face is satisfying that basic need of food on the table. And this is the one we have to treat with. That is going to be a colossal battle for governments across the OECS. In fact, I saw Antigua not too long ago in St. Lucia. In St. Lucia, the government was asking public officers to be lenient. And I see in Antigua, they were asking, the prime minister was saying he may have to borrow X amount to do certain things to keep workers funded. So we are having that challenge all about. In Grenada, I heard the prime minister saying revenue is down by 50%. So that is the first challenge. I don't know that there's an easy formula for that. Yes, you could do statistics and come up with all sorts of permutation as to how you will get around it. But that is going to be the first challenge. So I would hope, and I wouldn't make any pronouncement, but I would hope not just the political directorate, I would hope that those of us in sports would give some time to sit down and tete-a-tete and come up with some kind of come up with a constructive ideas, maybe not constructive, but ideas as to how we could treat with that in the aftermath of COVID.
Yeah, Ray. I don't want to say you're a philosopher, but I think it's still relevant in terms of coming up with something, Ray. It's almost a year now. Do you think, in the terms of, and if we probably look at Grenada, that we have really come up with anything by now?
I don't really think so. I think basically we're still scratching the ground. I I think I'm actively involved in many of the activities, maybe administrative capacity, but I think I follow just about everything that is happening. Sports, I mean, whatever evolves in society. Yes, I would say the health people have continuing to work and evolve with things, but I'm not too sure we as sports have really done anything much. I mean, look, I still see we stage events. As I said to you, when you look at the events, thank God that we are blessed and nothing has happened. I mean, it's like prior to COVID, we had our state of emergency in March 2020, and to me, some of the things we've seen is like in 2019. And again, yes, we do a lot of media hype and we have personalities saying things. But Mike, one thing I've said to people, I sometimes pick the area in which I live. I don't know that I hear radio play in these areas. Not even the dead news. In fact, some people tell me now they go online and see when is the funeral and who is who. So I'm saying so much have changed that we have to find other ways to communicate whatever is necessary. And maybe the best thing still, tried and tested, is going wrong with a loudspeaker because it disturbs you, whether you are sick, you're happy, whatever state of mind, you're going to hear the loudspeaker. I am saying that to say that I don't think I have seen the leadership from the Olympic Committee, neither the Ministry of Sports, neither the respective associations. I think by now, it would have been, to me, a good exercise that we sit together and come up with some, I don't know what it is, but whatever we believe is best for us as to how we should go forward. Because I'm hearing cricket playing, I'm hearing netball having a big thing next week, Saturday. I'm hearing swimming, I'm hearing athletics, I'm hearing Whits and Tide next weekend. So we individually doing our own thing. I don't know if that is right because I said to you again, yes, those of us who are aware may not be part of that group that may be infectious. So we're smart enough to stay away. But what about those who think there is no COVID and continue to behave as if it's normal time? What about those who expect to be remunerated as prior to COVID? So I think we need to sit down because I can tell you, some people don't see any change, don't think the world has changed. For them, well, maybe the revenue remains the same. And in sports, that revenue is no longer what it was in 2019. I mean, I write letters to get help for the Paralympics and table tennis and so forth. And not a lot of responses. Positive. I don't know if, Mike, you have the economic power to make the difference, but not many people seem to have that these days.
Okay, yeah, but and your point regarding the whole vaccination issue is so relevant in that only this week when I spoke to Barry Collymore, in fact, it was on Thursday when I spoke to Barry Collymore, and as chairman of the Grenada Tourism Authority, and I know he was speaking just after following a high-level meeting with some regional leaders were involved as well, I think, and I think members of the cruise sector, the IATA, which is the International Air Transport Association, etc., etc. They were part of those meetings, and I believe Barry was hinting that this is what it may look as in terms of the future. He spoke about a vaccine passport as well as a verification app, meaning that is the future of the travel industry, and things like that. So I think even your point about, using sports as a vehicle, using sports as a platform, National Sporting Association is very important, very relevant, because even if teams, and I know, for example, the Grenada national football team should be getting ready to participate in the Gold Cup not too long from now. I am certain that the whole issue of being vaccinated will be an issue as it relates to them being in the United States and moving from city to city, and things like that. So, but let me just play that part with Barry Collymore, and then when we come back, you will speak about that as well. Are there challenges faced by Caribbean countries in regards to sports tourism and pursuit of sports tourism in the context, Barry, of some of the limitations? And I'm talking about the immediate, future in terms of the limitations with the pandemic. For example, hotels requiring guests to be vaccinated and, all sorts of protocols. So do you see challenges faced to that industry, sports tourism industry?
There are challenges to the industry in general. But the way that the travel industry is moving, you probably will not be able to get on a plane very soon without a vaccine anyway. So if you are traveling in the future, and I'm not talking in the distant future, you will probably not be able to travel anywhere unless you are vaccinated. IATA is coming out with a vaccine passport. They're testing it now. JetBlue and others are coming out with their vaccine verification apps. Grenada is very much involved in that, and the same COVID challenges that face any other part of the travel sector face it. Sports tourism faces, so there's no difference.
Yeah, Ray. So, and the point that he's making there, and I assume it's also tied into what you're saying in terms of sporting associations playing that role. And I use the example of, the Gold Cup, Grenada national football team, for example, preparing to participate in the Gold Cup in probably another 2 months, So you see that appeal, Ray, in terms of people getting vaccinated, that's being very important, very relevant for the future?
Well, for sport people, I would say, Michael, to me, the great thing is your own health. I wouldn't call anybody name, but a significant personality in the region who is one of the persons maybe in high office He shared his experience on a WhatsApp with a lot of us, and said, being in a hospital and trying to breathe, it was an experience he wouldn't wish for anybody. And after that challenge, appetite and so many other things. Yes, he might be somebody in his 50s, but the point I'm making, I don't think an 18-year or 25-year is immune. So quite clearly, if the evidence are showing, look, you're unlikely to get sick as if you didn't have the vaccine. I see that as a plus because the state of sports in the Caribbean. Yes, there may be some emerging professional leagues. But I don't know, except cricket, I don't know any sports in the Caribbean that pays well. You may get a $2,000 or somebody sponsor you, but 6 months of sickness and that's done. So the only sports in the Caribbean that I really know that people make some decent dollars. I'm not talking about the Caribbean people who are in the US and in England and in Europe playing football. I'm talking about those of us who are based here. Cricket is still the most, in terms of economics, it's the best sports for Caribbean people. You go, you play in the IPA, you come back, you live in the Caribbean or wherever you live. No, I'm saying we have to think about not just now, not just arguing that these people are out to get some of us. The reality is that is more hogwash than anything else. Secure yourself, secure your family, that if that COVID was to impact on you, and it could minimize the sickness. To me, that is what is important because being sick is costly. I've known people who are as healthy as you, and 4 months of that thing, they tell you their bank account gone. People have to do barbecue, and that too, is just imagine you're doing a barbecue, which is really not doing much. So why not think the positive way, how I can stay healthy? And if you stay healthy, being on the national team will be no challenge. And I would say to you, Michael, too, in all honesty, if you get sick, as far as I know, in any other, Grenada, I could see, for the first 2 months, for the first 2 weeks, people come and look for you. After that, it dwindles down to one or two, and then nobody at all. So let's not ignore these things. Precaution is what we have to start to think about with COVID because it's not going away. So I think that the talk about the passport. It may mean that we have to do a lot of public education because I listen to some of the parliaments in the Europe and it's a harsh debate and I can see problems emerging. So I don't want to say that may be the way to go without a lot of more public education. But clearly, I would encourage people who want to be versatile. I see the debate about SGU. I mean, I can't say I disagree with SGU. I mean, you're bringing 5 from the United States. There are Grenadians who are going to be working with them. There are sports people who are taking academic classes there. Why are you risking that? I would take the vaccine. I would understand if you have challenges that forbids, then something is worked out. But I don't see any real sensible about perception being somebody want to kill some black people or to whatever. I don't know that is something or the beast, what the mark of the beast. I'm a big believer, my friend. I'm consciously convinced that there is a supreme. So, Michael, I think we have to work with those who are perhaps creating the fear for others. And I think we have to take it serious. But Barry has merit in what he's saying, that there might be something that if we are on the plane, we want to know that we all are vaccinated. And if we are in the playing field or in the pavilion, we want to feel safe. So I really, I hate to say I didn't think the world had reached, well, I didn't expect the world to reach where it reached. But then, there's nothing we can do other than change with the change that is required.
Well, we'll get back to some comments from Barry again, but Cliff is saying that the vaccination cannot help when you're on a ventilator, it can prevent you from getting COVID and being another body for the undertaker. And and just going back to that, Ray, well, just a little banter that's going on there. I know you will laugh. Toro is saying, Ray going and play tennis to have Ken Joseph beaten. He has a good excuse today. He was tired after the interview with Bascom. Then Clever saying, Toro understands Sak is thinking of returning to Grenada and looking forward to playing Ray in his first table tennis match. And then Depo is giving the last one. Now, Depo, you got to make Ray start trembling now. He never beat a Wolfman in competition yet. Not Sak, Charlie, Knapp, Wendell, Winston, nor Garth George. I don't worry.
Michael, is Toro now a promoter? Is Toro now a Don King?
I don't know. Toro is just giving you talk about the table tennis, Ray, and he mentioned some names there, Ray. Obviously, the Charlie and the Wendell and Winston and Garth George, all these guys who I'm certainly familiar with them, no doubt.
Well, you shouldn't forget Dennis Thomas, because Dennis was perhaps one of the premier players, and the lead Christopher Francis, as well as Marva McIntyre.
Right. Yeah. So that's some very important name. But Ray, earlier you mentioned something there which I think is also important, because to be fair enough, I think it was some time ago. You spoke about that. I think furthermore you wrote a commentary regarding the whole issue of alcohol and drugs, which in terms of sports, and particularly in Grenada, and how it has been dominating, sports in Grenada. And I want you to comment on that, because in the interview with Barry Collymore on Thursday, he made mention of the whole issue of liming, and it brought to mind the comments you made some time ago, well, the commentary rather you wrote some time ago regarding to how alcohol is really wrecking sports in Grenada. Some of the young people are, involved in alcohol and drugs, and you wonder at times whether or not there is actually drug testing going on in local sports. But let me hear what Barry has to say, and then you will come back on that.
And this may be a little bit controversial, but I feel that as well, that in a sense, the way that we socialize in the Caribbean, or the way that we are beginning to, the heavy reliance on liming and alcohol as our avenues of leisure is probably one of the reasons why some places are having a harder time with the pandemic than others, because we have forgotten some of the traditional ways in which we socialize through sport, and people aren't playing as much sport as they used to. Men will spend a whole day on the block lining, and I'm not condemning anyone or saying that that's a bad thing. But when you look at our incidence of non-communicable diseases, high rates of hypertension and diabetes, is because we have become too sedentary. And you and I know, Michael, when you watch as a kid, when you watch the West Indies on TV, if you're fortunate to have a TV or you watch it by your neighbor, and the game ends, especially when the West Indies, like, the first thing you do is you go out in the road and you play cricket with the boys, or you because that example is there. I think that we have to. Sport is not just in terms of sports tourism. It's not just about the visitor. It's also about us and keeping our populations healthy and setting an example for future generations. We have an opportunity now through sport, through leisure, because of our record, stellar record in most places in the Caribbean of managing the pandemic, to use sport and leisure as an add-on, as an adjunct, and as a catalyst, and indeed a great marketing vehicle to get people who would not normally come to the Caribbean to come to the Caribbean.
Yeah, right. So, he started off with a whole issue that I know it's so dear to you regarding the, issue of the liming and the drinking and all that. And especially as it relates to sports and the young people who are involved in sports, right? Has anything changed from since, I mean, you wrote that a few years ago. Have you seen
Well,
anything
Barry is
change?
correct that I am echoing his sentiment. I am very concerned and actually disturbed at the pattern of, if I may say, it says Lyman. So it's Lyman we're talking about. Um, to me, it's a pattern of um, replacing recreation with alcohol. And I think you can't blame some of the young people because, without a doubt, the commercials are it's like Kentucky. I mean, it is irresistible for an innocent mind. I mean, it tells you that there is pleasure that you can't resist, rather than a boring going to the tennis court or going to the cricket field or going to the football field. I mean, I remember James Clarkson and Garvin Houston. So remember that. Garvin would be kicking balls and James Clarkson goes pick them up. Both of them on the field for 2 hours in Tarantine. I'm not saying they say I used to be in CSA. And when he comes to CSA, the late Byron Steele will tell him, James, man, you're a big man and you have this little boy kicking so many balls and you go and pick it up. Now, James was also, as you know, he was the commissioner of police at one point, he was an ambassador. So it shows you had a disciplined mind who was working with a young man who also depended on him for guidance. We're not seeing that again. I would say one thing to you though, since the pandemic, more people are walking. I will tell you, our friend Lester Smith, when during the pandemic and we had what, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hours, 6 hours, I went to Tantine to spend that 2 hours and we would sit there. And in fact, there would have been two people that turned up by Leicester 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock to do some exercise and so forth. This thing has blossomed into, I would think, I don't go upstairs by him again because it's too crowded. But there are as many, I would think, about 50, 60 persons. I would say 80% of them are ladies. Ladies, not just young people, but people of all ages. And they have been consistent. And then I live down in Cadiz. So the Bishop Highway is very active both morning and evening with mainly women again. So it seems like something is happening to men. On the beach, well, Michael, if you come, you would be the youngest because I'm older than you. Junior Murray used to come, but I think he tells me he's elsewhere now. But really and truly, he's right. And how we change that? I don't think we have enough people who are that committed to sports as we had Tyrone Sampat Harbin, Dandarat, the lead Dandarat, Papitet, James Clarkson. They had, yes, I know it's a different era, but we had the Dauntless. We still have Queen's Park Rangers. But if you talk to Bumpy there, he will tell you that this is not the Queen's Park Rangers of Bascom era, and you're younger. It is completely different. People come to practice. I mean, by 5 o'clock, if you see 3, 4, you see a lot. By 6, when it starts to get dark, then you have the whole team. So I'm saying to you that we seem not to have leaders in sports that are committed as before. And I noticed your debate with the West Indies team and the comment made by Sir Curtly Ambrose. I mean, anybody debate that certainly don't have a head that is working. I mean, there's certainly not going to be that unless God comes from heaven with a miracle, because nobody is playing. I mean, nobody is playing. The St. Andrew Cricket League used to be the biggest league in Grenada, perhaps in the OECS, 40 teams. That is just what, T20 now? I think they had 35 overs last year and the year before. I mean, so really and truly, how are you going to produce? I mean, let's go to netball. And I've followed that since the 60s, so I can talk about that in fact. In fact, I usually tell people myself, Cecil Greenwich, and Claudia Alexis selected the best Grenada team. It came second to Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean Championship. Trinidad beat them by 3 goals.
That was in 82? That was in 82, right?
That is correct. The selectors
Yeah.
were Cecil Green, myself, Claudia Alexis, and Joan St. Bernard was the coach. So I'm not guessing that. I have the minutes here still. So I'm saying that netball, you have 7 A division teams, 6. They play 1 round of matches. You have 7 B division teams. In 82, you had 20-something teams. 10 in the A division, another 12 in the B, and 7 or 6 in the C. In football, you had what? First division, second division, third division. You don't have these things anymore. So, Michael, how do we change? Maybe the ministry and the Olympic, again, we have to sit down and find ways that the new people, we're not going to change the world. There's Zoom. So perhaps we could have Zoom engagement, or we could have whatever using technology. But we are losing the battle to attractive commercials. I mean, all the commercials you see, 3 for 10. So maybe we need to engage the alcoholic companies. I mean, I know they're in business for money, so maybe they won't listen. But when you look at the amount of young people you've seen, I mean, it's frightening. And then you hear some young people at 25, 26 telling you, well, when I was young, I mean, I'm twice, 3 times the age, and you're hearing people talking that nonsense. I mean, so there's a lot to work towards, and we can't ignore it. COVID hopefully has given us a chance to sit and review. But I am disturbed, just like Barry, that I tell you, yesterday I wasn't passed by the market on Hillsborough Street. There were about 200 people, and each had a beer in, man and woman, Momendo, had a beer in his or her hand. I'm not criticizing the beer, but it wasn't one, it wasn't two. And it was just entertainment. I mean, I went to Tantine, there were 4 people or 5 people in Tantine. Coach Joseph had about half a dozen, and Lester had some ladies upstairs exercising. Playing field void. I haven't seen a cricket practice in Tantine, the Limes, for the year. And these are 2 places I go nearly every day. I haven't seen anybody practice. No, let me take that back. In January, Junior Murray had a training session there. 4 players turned up. But in the morning, Junior has his academy training there. I'm just saying to you, I mean, where are the cricketers? This is the cricket season. Yes, there's COVID, but nobody's practicing anything. So we need to, I mean, and there are so many opportunities now. You don't even need to learn to bat again. You need to learn to whoop, and you make the T20 team and millions in your pocket. Yeah.
Ray, let me get Rudy Silver said you're right. We no longer have the sport habits of old days, and I think Margaret is saying here that I think with regard to sports, it has a lot to do with the breakdown of the club structure. Clubs are now that's Toro, sorry. Clubs are now fundamentally teams. They meet to discuss and make arrangements for competitions. Steel bands, in many ways, have evolved into what clubs used to be. Steel bands have a wider program and activities for involving youth. And it's Margaret who was saying, but how is the concept of sports today any different from linemen on the block? Isn't it the same sit down, eat and drink? Where are the playgrounds that were once available and open to the public to just recreate oneself? Sports today is a spectator affair. But Margaret Ray is saying that you know, in terms of the playground, it's there. It's just that the folks are not coming around, Ray.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Margaret, in all honesty, I mean, if you come, guys, and you, not only my age, people who are in even the late 30s, we used to fix Monrouge. Saturday, you drove water on your head to fix the pitch. I know that's not existing anymore, but you have professionals cutting the field, people who are contracted by the government. And so the fields are generally in Grenada are in good condition. You go to Woburn, there's a team working in Woburn, paid. The lights are poor, but at least there are some people there. But you're not seeing the numbers. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I have not seen anybody in the netball court in Ghana for the entire year. And I drive past there 3, 4 times a day. The basketball court has a few people, but not the numbers as in Cyril Cox's days. In the lines, Mrs. Ross do some work there, and Cyril does some work there. Brian does a good job, but the playing field after 2 years is still not fixed. As Brian Benjamin does a very good job. In fact, he's planning a tournament there. In Springs, there's can't remember his name. He's a Philip also with Voodoo. They just had a tournament there. So I'm not saying there isn't, but Toro, there's certainly not. I don't think we could re-engineer the Toro era and the Clever Deputy era with Bruce Bain. But there is no reason why we shouldn't be seeing more groups being organized, coming to the beach and run. I mean, so many people with huge tummy. I mean, I find that is so absurd. I mean, I don't have a wife, but if I was a wife and I have a husband with that, I would certainly either divorce him or march him out of the house unless he's sick. I mean, this thing is so horrible. Michael, if I have a huge belly, it's because I sick. I mean, I go look at my weight, and the minute time I see that I gone back on diet. I mean, it may sound crazy, but I am so sometimes wonder about men. I mean, so much of us look so abzucky, and we have to be fair with ourselves. So I am saying the Olympic Committee, the Ministry of Sports, we have to make it an agenda issue because listen. Now I listen to talk. Sometimes I listen to talk shows, not very regular. We come down on the hospital. We beat up the hospital. We beat up the nurses. We beat up the doctors. We beat up everybody in health. And when you see those of us who beat it up, we 300 pounds. I mean, sometimes I ask these guys, aren't you ashamed to be going? You just reached 50. Diabetes, high blood pressure, all the non-communicable diseases. And I mean, you should be. When my mother was sick, I went to the hospital, a room with 8 people. In that room, 6 people either lose a foot or 2. And I older than all of them. So I'm talking about people in their 40s and 50s. So it is a state, it is a national, well, I wouldn't say, yeah, it's a national issue. It's something that the state has to champion. It is perhaps as important as championing the economy, because the economy as it is will not be able to support so many of us who are sick, visiting the hospital. I mean, just check it out. What's the cost of having a nurse and a doctor look at X amount of patients every day, providing free medication, providing unemployment benefit for somebody? Mike, let me just tell you another one. The government gives this what I think it's $250 a month, and according to myself and Charles the Bishop, who used to play tennis, we buy the treasury there. We weren't in line for that. We were waiting. We were having an old talk. And we looked and we saw some people in the line. They were younger than both of us. And they're in the line to collect the government $250. And don't tell me it's their parents. I know it's not their parents. Because some were from the areas where I come from. No, I'm saying, Michael, could we afford that? So we have to find ways, not just in Grenada, because I understand in many of these small islands, the same thing is the same. It's a story that is repeating itself. We need to do something about it. And perhaps I heard you talk about the OECS sports desk. Maybe these are things that, from an OECS perspective, we begin to champion. Because the more people are active, as far as I'm hearing from the side, is the less you will perhaps be visiting the hospitals for some of the diseases like the blood pressure and so forth.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Ray, because Toro has made a point, and I think it ties in with what the next piece from Barry that I want to play for you and for you to comment on. Toro is saying that, and there are so many teams these days that a fella could be half decent, half drunk player, and he could find a cricket or football team to play with. Long ago, you have to practice, and come up to shape to make a dauntless Atoms, Carnage, or St. George's Cricket Club. And then we have Barry was actually saying that, national sports associations need to place more emphasis on amateur and community. Yes, he did mention community-oriented sports He says that sporting associations see themselves primarily in the preparation of elite individual and teams, but he's saying that should not be so. Let's listen to Barry and then we'll come back and comment on it. Barry, I think you actually made an appeal as well for sporting associations, and not just sporting associations in Grenada, but sporting associations in the region to contact your respective tourist boards and, get involved, being part of the process.
Not just that, the sporting associations have to not just see themselves as the preparation of elite teams. They have to see themselves as creating a sport for all policy, which encourages sport and leisure throughout the country, which then has health and well-being benefits to the entire country. It's not just about preparing an 11-man team to go to travel. I think the sporting organizations are missing the mark where they have to realize that their greatest legacy would be the propagation of sport throughout the entire country, creating linkages in communities and in semi-professional and amateur leagues and so on. But we are focusing too much of our attention on elite sport, and you think that these sporting bodies think that identifying a youngster at 10 years old means that you have found the right athlete. That's not true. There are a lot of late bloomers that if you have created a culture of sport, like in some other parts of the world, you look at places like Australia, then you will find that you may pick up people even far more talented in their later years, in their later teens. But the first thing that governing bodies have got to get back to is making sure that people enjoy themselves with sport. It should not just be about, and all of them have nice buildings. These national governing bodies of sport, they all build these nice buildings and so on. But what about the community? What about the average man in the street? What about encouraging that person who's lining on the block to come and play a sport or do something that is sporting oriented, that is fun, that is enjoyable, and that is healthy? And that is what they have to. I think that, in a sense, we've lost our way in terms of how sport is administered. In some respects, we've lost our way in terms of what really is sport. Sport is meant for enjoyment. Yes, people can compete at the elite level, but most sport is not at the elite level. And I think that our national governing bodies of sport have got to focus more on the amateur and the community level, and create a climate where villages and households and this is about our future and molding young people across the Caribbean. And sport and leisure. It's a great way of doing that.
Ray, to an extent, wasn't it like that before in the days gone by?
Well, I guess Tor will want to remind me about Grandland's PYO and Uncle Gary. I wouldn't mind it in case. Tor would know that, because that's what it was. I didn't get into sports because of being in some national team. We were all about beating Woburn and Cadiz and Belmont and Springs. In fact, I'll give you a joke. Today there's this talk about bringing in players to play for teams. Well, Osbert Mitchell is not alive, late Osbert Mitchell, but he would tell you that if this thing was Grandland's, we never had talented footballers at Springs. Springs had, Caffey, Osbert, Robert. They had a whole array of top players. That's where Ted Walker from, and Ted Walker was an elite Grenadian and Caribbean sports person. But I wanted to beat Springs. So let me tell you what I did. I went and get Ram folks, because I knew Ram. I used to go back street school. I got Paul Roberts. I got Rado Griffith, Whitaker, Yankee Man, that is Toro's brother. So when Springs came to play Grandlands that afternoon, I had two people from Trinidad. I tried to tell you their name. One went on to play for Trinidad. He was a top player. When Springs arrived, and they saw the Grenadians team, they say, these guys are not registered. I said, well, look, I'm the president of the league. I registered them. So that match, Osbert Mitchell will tell you, might have been his best match. Springs won the match 1-0. They won it because they were a team and we were a group of individuals. But Paul will tell you, Paul was part of that team. I mean, it was amazing, the match. I wins, but I went and get foreign players. And that is perhaps the start of what we started to do, bring in players from outside. So I'm saying to you again that Barry is all right. And I think the reason why we are where we are, in the Walter days and the Toro days and Cleveroy and all of those people who were 60s, 70s, the people who are in sports had an origin in sports. I mean, to me, the greatest contributor for sports in St. George's is Beer, Rupert Beer Williams. I think he's 85 now. He sits on top of that hill there overlooking Tantine and he calls it Mount Zion. Now, Toro and Cleve will tell you, Rupert organized sports annually for years. The people who are in sports now are basically people who may be very bright. We call them in to administer sports because of their academic ability and ability to engage with foreign people associations or the world body, but they have no connections. I mean, if you look at most of these people, none ever show up to a local thing except their own association. I mean, that wasn't a Walter St. John or Roy St. John. I mean, or Margaret Dow. They were in every nook and cranny. They knew people everywhere and they went to help develop sports everywhere. I don't know of many administrators right now I see in Tanti, except when the West Indies will come here next week. I'll see everybody. Why? It's an international team. So we need to find administrators who are grounded, who have that an appreciation to do what Barry is saying. But if we continue like what we're doing now, I mean, I could talk about boxing. I heard debate and boxing. Michael, I was secretary of the Boxing Association for 8 years. The best period, perhaps, we didn't wait. Well, in fact, we went to the Olympics. Bonnie Wilson went in 84. John Diabo was the president. He died, and we all miss him still. He was perhaps the best boxing president we had. Margaret knew him too because Margaret was around. She used to be in the radio station and tag along with me and others to witness these events. But you don't have that people anymore. What you have are people admire their academic ability and their ability to communicate and to write. But just one thing. I remember there was an OECS tournament in Tantin, and Bear wouldn't mind me saying that. Bear made a speech, and everybody thought it wasn't a speech for a regional tournament. So they said, look, we're going to replace Bear with whoever it is. They replaced Bear, and that volleyball went dead for about 5 years. The person that was not there for thing. Yes, they had academic, they had everything, but they weren't prepared to go to Soteres, take the car and come back. Bear used to pick me up here, bring me to St. Patrick's, I didn't have no car, and bring me back home to look at the game and to report on the game. And he used to pick up players all about the referees. We don't have that again. That has changed. So I think sport will suffer for a while unless the Ministry of Sports, Olympic Committee, heard you talk about the OECS, Keith Joseph around who had that passion, or Walter St. John or Roy St. John. To me, the people with that passion are not there anymore. What you have really are, as I tell you, people who are, I respect their academic ability and they have been doing a good job in communicating, bringing programs, but it's more than that. It's not elite athletes alone, as Barry quite rightly said. It is getting that person and that area to fall in love with sports. When I went to CSA, sack, and them say, break up, you can't walk. The first year I played, the only person two people I didn't beat, it was Sack and Dennis. So even with the disability, Charlie will tell you that he did lose. So I reached the semifinals, and I didn't come from Grants to beat anybody. I came from Grants because they say a tournament, and myself and Fly went to play. So Barry has all the right notes, but it's how to get the right notes to the right people at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and Vida is saying, Ray, I agree with Toro. We got our start from community sports. We cannot forget Uncle Gary. She said,
Vina will remember that. I had to go and pick up with a special car. He was in charge of Woodlands.
really. And Toro is saying too that Beard didn't just organize Ray, he did everything. Got sponsors, made the fixtures, marked the field, put up the flags, and then on the day of the match, he was a referee. That was important. And the first time I saw Clark Scott Rum was a youth going to St. David with a Carnage team to play FET matches. The big men drank Clark Scott after the game. We, the young boys, were given lime juice and fig and saltfish. And then just before we go, Ray, I think there was a question there. I think Harold was saying to you, I will have to pull it up, but he started off by saying, hi, Raymond Philip Roberts. I think he wants to greet you, but he wanted to know about the newly elected executive of the Grenada, as the Boxing Association of Grenada being overturned. What is your thought about it, Ray?
Well, me and Davis Adams are very good friends. And Davis, I know you're listening. I still am going to make my donation to Spring School for the civic program. When you're getting old and you have so many things to do, you forget I was supposed to do it this week. So Davis, I'm coming for sure. My theory is that, look, that saga, as bad as it is, will benefit no one. I don't know that the people who are elected are people who are vindictive or have any malice towards anyone. I think there's a need for a sit down, and I want Davis to be the one because he is a wonderful gentleman. We have worked in the trade union, we have worked elsewhere. So I think that understanding must begin there because what you don't want, and Michael, you know that, if there is this Tagawade in court, the International Federation is going to suspend them. And I'm glad Vida is listening. They will go nowhere. Everybody will stay home. It will stay as long as perhaps, and you know the court system, Michael. Everybody know the court system, I know for Grenada, and maybe throughout the Caribbean. It's a tedious exercise. So for me, the way forward is to have an engagement, and there are people capable of this. I know Neil Roberts very well, not talkative fella as you would have seen. He never ventured into the media. I think Bonnie is my friend, and Bonnie is not for looking for glory. I could tell you that. I know Bonnie, we chat about tennis, and we encourage each other to play as much as we can. So there are people there that you could sit and engage, and whatever they need to fix. And personally, I didn't really think they have anything to fix, because to be honest with you, I don't understand the debate. If our organization is dissolved, the secretary has to be in play. I mean, who you will communicate to? The only person you have to communicate to is the person who held the office as secretary, and in fact, limit his restriction to just that process. But that is history. I would want to suggest to the young boxer, I know him very well because he would have been in the latter part of John Diabo era, Joel, and the gentleman in Caracou. I have a great
Sebastian.
respect. Yeah. A wonderful job in Caracou. Still, I think behind the scenes, they need to find a way out. But that media thing doesn't help the sports. It takes away sponsorship. You lose respect. You detour everybody. So it is something that needs to be fixed. And I tell you, boxing has a popularity which ought to be built on, not to be discouraged. So, Harold, I am playing my role. I'm talking to Mr. Adams, and we debate about the pros and cons. But I would try my best to see if I could have him engage the other side and find a way out some way or the other.
Okay, then. Thank you very much, Ray. I want to thank you for being part of the program. And as Toro was saying, that we hope to hear from you the results of the matches today. Just kidding.
Well, Michael, I believe that he has sold Cooper Hill. I don't think he has revealed the cost of the price, but Cleveroy may not know it. May know the village for, I would think, in millions. But Mike, I'll speak to him in private. I believe he's becoming a Don King, and I would want to be one of his soldiers. I don't hear from him anymore. I don't see him anymore. But I notice he writes a lot of wonderful stories, bringing to light wonderful things. So I can see the dollars are beginning to accumulate. Margaret seems to be poor still, but Toro seems to have elevated. I don't know if it's to a pharaoh, but Michael, you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity, and best wishes to continue to do the job you're doing. I think we in Grenada need it because, with no disrespect to my colleague, I am one of those who's very disappointed in where sports commentary and broadcast and coverage has reached. And I think you are filling that blank admirably. So good luck.
Okay, then. Thank you very much. And don't forget, Harold is saying, Ray, don't forget that Tommy is coming to pick us up for Victoria for commentaries this afternoon. That's Harold is saying that. I know that.
Harold has good memory.
Yes, but Torres ending by saying that you are his comrade for life. Yeah.
That means I don't have to worry.
Thanks very much, Ray.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much. And Theo Duncan is saying, she's saying good afternoon to you. And I guess as much Margaret and all the other folks are saying good afternoon to you. Thank you very much, Ray.
Good, man. Bye-bye.
Okay, then. Bye, Ray. So that's Ray Roberts live from St. George's. And Ray has been giving us a nice update as to what is happening regarding sports, his take on the vaccination. Sporting associations, as Ray is saying, you have, especially the Football Association, you have a very important role to play in ensuring that your constituents are vaccinated. He's appealing to the Grenada Football Association in particular, but in the broader sense, sporting associations, to get on the campaign to encourage their players, their officials to be vaccinated. And as you heard from Barry Collymore, the chairman of the Grenada Tourism Authority, that the future in travel, and he's talking about the immediate future in traveling, will all have to center around being vaccinated. Well, I can say I'm halfway there. I took my first shot already, and I'm due for the second shot in the coming days. So hopefully by the end of May, I should be fully vaccinated. I was hoping to get a one shot, but the day I had to get that shot is the day they had, paused the Johnson & Johnson. But nevertheless, I am all for being vaccinated. And as we are seeing these days, that it's being demanded more and more that one should be vaccinated. Margaret, I took your advice, and I followed you after in terms of getting vaccinated. Thank you once again, folks. And just to say thanks once again to the folks in Bermuda. That's Donna Rayner, the president of the Bermuda National Athletic Association, for being part of our program, the first segment of our program, along with her deputy. That's the deputy LOC, the chair, deputy LOC chair. Yeah, that's Mia Bean. And they gave us an insight into the cancellation, well, not that of their doing, but their disappointment rather, the cancellation of the Curfew Games in Bermuda, which was actually scheduled for August. Mid-August, and it has been cancelled by NACAC. Well, I heard from Mike while the program was going on, Mike Sands, who's the president. Well, I spoke to Mike Sands. He was actually on the program last Thursday, and I was hoping to have him on the program, but Mike actually is on his way to India. I heard from him that, he doesn't really want to get into the back and forth, the tit for tat, basically. But, it was glad to hear from him, at least. I heard from him because I wanted to make sure that I'm getting the other side of the story regarding that. But Mike is on his way to India. In fact, he's going to a graduation. Well, India. Yeah, Mike, India? India? Yeah, let me make sure it was India, I think. Yeah, India, you said. You actually heading to your son's graduation. Yeah. But for what we know, what is happening in India, Mike, I hope that is what I read correctly. Yes, India. And he expressed regret not being able to see the show, but he will look at the replay. Thanks very much. So, folks, thanks very much for being part of our program. Don't forget to join us on Thursday, God's willing, Thursday evening from 8 o'clock for another in our series of TalkSports. We should have a special guest once again, as per usual, a special guest on our program, but I will give you an update during the week regarding our guests on Thursday. But say for now, by the way, I want to say congratulations to all those sportsmen and sportswomen who are actually who have graduated and graduating. So some have graduated already and graduating this week. But a special shout out to Amanda Crawford, who is actually, her birthday is today. Her 22nd birthday is today. She's also graduating today, Texas Tech, a graduate certificate, and she's also competing in the Big 12 championship. So a lot of track and field, by the way, today in North America. So we have a number of Grenadian athletes, well, Caribbean athletes, let me say, because we are listening throughout the Caribbean, but Grenada and other Caribbean athletes who are actually competing. And safe trip, Kirani. Kirani is heading to the Czech Republic. Yes, he's on his way to the Czech Republic. Heard from him earlier today that he's flying out today to the Czech Republic. He's competing on Wednesday. And we'll hopefully have more information on that. But on Wednesday, God's willing, Kirani will be competing in the second race of the season. He's competing on Wednesday, and then he has another race at the end of the month. So on Wednesday, he goes to, the Czech Republic, where he competes in the, what it is, it's the Continental Goal Challenge. And then on the 28th, he will be in Doha, Qatar. Yeah, he'll be competing there as well. So good things in terms of track and field. And we look forward to hearing more about Kirani's exploits as he tries to rebound and gets back and focus on the Tokyo Olympics. That's the next big thing. Yeah, the Tokyo Olympics, the next big thing. So thank you once again, folks, and see you on Thursday, God's willing, from 8 o'clock in the evening. Until then, do enjoy the weekend.